So game week 1 is very quickly drawing to a close. Then we've got one game left to go with Manchester United up against Wolves on Monday Night Football. Could be some big changes to our FPL scores in terms of that one, but it's definitely time now to have a look ahead at game week 2. Have a look at some players to buy, players to avoid, what we can learn from game week 1. Which teams are the best to jump on now and which players should you be looking at transferring in? You're going to learn that all in today's video. So make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. Leave a thumbs up if you do enjoy, and let's get into it. And what I thought would be sensible, first of all, would be to take a look at how the template team is currently looking. And if you're new to FPL or is your first season playing, the template team is rather the structure that a lot of top managers are going for. A lot of the most experienced FPL players will have a team along these kind of lines that you're seeing to the left of me here. So if you don't have a team that looks anything like this at all, maybe consider playing your wildcard. But these are the kind of players that a lot of people are locking into their sides at the moment. And I'm going to talk through a few of the positions now, how some of those price points and the ones that are blank have actually performed in terms of the different assets available in those positions, and we'll have a bit of a deeper dive into a few of those particular players as well. So starting off in goal, most people are on Matt Turner as that second option, who actually could come in for a lot of goalkeepers in game week 2 in my view. He's got that nice Sheffield United fixture at home, as you can see. And Forest weren't brilliant against Arsenal, but I do quite like their defence, especially at home. It's not been bad at all in recent past, and especially last season, they were a much better side defensively and attacking at home than they were away. But the other goalkeeper, we did have some Jordan Pickfords, we did have some Sam Johnsons. I'd say Pickford's probably the most popular. There's also Onana, who's of course still yet to play. But all those three keepers have a weaker fixture than Turner in game week 2. So a lot of people considering benching Pickford, Johnston, Onana, whoever it is, for Turner, which I think could be a rather sensible choice. I'm personally going to do that myself. I own Johnston, who did actually keep a clean sheet in game week 1, which I was very happy with. But yeah, whichever keeper you own at the moment, there's not really a need to be transferring anything like that. For some reason, if you went into the season with Kepa and no other backup keeper or something, then you could, of course, move across to Robert Sanchez, who at 4.5 million has some very nice fixtures for that Chelsea side now and seems nailed in that team. You can see from Ben Chilwell in the row just below in their defence how nice those fixtures are. And not only are they nice over the next 4, but they're nice for the foreseeable future as well in game weeks following those 4 fixtures. In the defence, the first slot is where there's quite a lot of people split at the moment. Saliba is the one who people who managed to catch the Gabriel news seem to have flocked to in their masses. He came in and got an assist, which was rather surprising given his underlying data from past seasons, but didn't get the clean sheet in the end, so the swing didn't end up being too painful for people who were stuck with Gabriel and didn't manage to catch that early news from the Let's Talk FPL live stream, deadline stream. We've then got Estepinian, who's in a lot of teams as well. You can see why the highest expected FPL point scorer from Saturday in the fixtures. Fantastic. Could have had 4 assists, ended up with 1 at the end of the match, which meant that he got all 3 bonus as well. And seeing that he got those bonus points when he was booked and didn't keep a clean sheet just kind of proves how good he is in that domain and as an FPL asset in general. Ben Chilwell is then one who I think not many people, and loads of people started this week, whether you were benching him or didn't own him against this Liverpool fixture, but he was playing almost as a left winger, and I think he's definitely one that is your priority to get in right now. You can see just from his heat map here how high up the pitch he was. This is the kind of heat map you'd expect from a left winger, not a left back and not a defender listed in FPL. And we can see there, as mentioned with Sanchez, how nice the fixtures are, not only the next 4, but they're okay afterwards as well, with the Villa game being a bit tough, but Fulham in game week 7 looks a nice fixture as well, who I actually thought deserved to lose to Everton, to be honest, in game week 1. And you can see where they rank over the next 7, 4th in terms of fixture difficulty. And for my fixtures, in case you don't know, I actually use the Tim Bayer fixtures. These are the fixture ticker that I'm using now. I'll leave a link to it down below in the description, but I really rate it. I think it's great. It combines the attacking and defensive sides, which for Chilwell is obviously something that you kind of want, because you're not just looking for clean sheets with Chilwell, you're looking for attacking returns as well. And they rank 4th overall, Chelsea, just behind Brentford, Spurs and Villa, but we may well end up coming back to this graphic. So Take a screenshot of it if you want. I'd recommend going over to the link down below in the description if you want to check it out for yourself. But yeah, really rate that fixture ticker, so I just wanted to give them a shout out. So he got 7 points in game week 1, Ben Chilwell, but an expected FPL points of 8.5 in the fixture against Liverpool. An expected goal involvement tally of 0.93 is ridiculous for a defender, and 2 big chances involved for him as well. Like it was 1 for himself and 1 created. So didn't get the full 90, but that could actually be a plus in future game weeks if Chilwell's minutes are being slightly managed. He came off rather late on in the game. If he does come off at that time in future game weeks, maybe Chelsea won't have conceded a goal and he could have a clean sheet locked in. Then Chelsea could concede afterwards, and that could lend itself to even more points and a bigger advantage over the rest of the Chelsea back line. So really, really like him. He's obviously the Chelsea defender of choice to own right now. Just wanted to give a special shout out to him, to be honest. In the defender option now, the defender 4 pick right there, we've got the 4.5 to kind of 5 million bracket, where most people at the moment own a 4.5 million defender, probably on the bench, waiting to come in if need be, or maybe if Estepinian's fixtures turn, like you can see they do in a few game weeks' time, maybe to come in and fill in for Saliba when Arsenal face off against Manchester United in a few game weeks as well. So we'll take a look at some of those defender picks now, and some of the ones to touch on that you maybe, if you're looking to bring in or switch across, ones that I'd be looking to buy. Anderson at Crystal Palace is one that I really, really liked, and one that I was quite tempted to start the season with, to be honest. The only thing putting me off him was the fact that I also really like Lewis Hall, who looks like he might be in line for a loan move from Chelsea over to Crystal Palace. And that meant that I would prefer him as an option to Anderson, and so I wanted to give it a bit more time. I also have Johnston in goal, so it would mean a double up on the Crystal Palace defence, and as much as I was backing and raving about them in pre-season and how they finished to the end of last season's campaign, I wasn't 100% sold on going for him as my 4.5 million option. Would have been on the bench this week anyway, probably, for Chilwell, because of, as I mentioned, shouldn't really be benching such an attacking defender. So he would have got quite a healthy point score on my bench, and you can see his expected FPL points total of 7.9 as well was rather strong, and picked up all 3 bonus in Palace's opening game of the season. So he's probably one to watch right now. He's got the Arsenal fixture this week, so if you need a defender to play in game week 2, it's probably not the best course of action. Another game week to assess how that Palace defence is performing would definitely be some valuable info this early on in the season. We've then got Matty Cash of Aston Villa, who missed an absolute worldie of a chance. That open goal basically could have had easily put that into the back of the net. It looked a bit harder to miss than score, to be honest. The one thing that does hurt me a bit with Villa at the moment is they didn't look their best defensively. They've now lost Tyrone Mings as well, who looks like, unfortunately, he's going to suffer a pretty nasty knee injury that's going to require surgery and a lengthy spell on the sidelines. And with that, they've got Konsa at centre-back, they've got Pau Torres as well. I'm unsure on Diego Carlos and how fit he is, but they don't really have another solid leader option in centre-back at the moment from where I'm sat anyway. Maybe Villa fans will tell me otherwise, but in terms of losing Mings, that will be a big loss to Villa, would be my assessment. And so I'd want to wait and see how Villa perform when they have some easier fixtures than, of course, Newcastle, who managed to batter them 5-1. But also, without Mings, how are they going to fare in those easier fixtures? Will they even keep clean sheets in those ones? I guess time will tell under Emery this year. Botman of Newcastle is one that I definitely like the look of. He actually racked up a decent expected assist tally in game week 1-2 and an expected FPL points total of 5.0. For 4.5 million, I don't think you can see a better Newcastle defensive option when the fixtures do look a little bit better. But we saw even Villa in game week 1, people were thinking maybe Villa might be able to go and get something done at St James's Park. That didn't turn out to be the case. Didn't keep a clean sheet quite, but Newcastle looking very promising. And I think in future weeks, that transfer over to Botman is going to become a very popular one, but maybe not one for game week 2. One player that I do really like for game week 2, and the player that is actually currently my own 4.5 million defender of choice, is going to be Rico Henry, who looked fantastic in that Brentford game in game week 1. He got an assist. He also should have had a second one from Mbomo, who missed a very, very high XG chance in that game. And Henry just looked really, really attacking, and that was mainly because I think on top of his just natural ability to go forward and get involved with the attack, that the system allowed a back 5 with Henry kind of as a wing back in this opening game. Whether that's going to continue, I'm seeing quite a few mention that maybe it will be a back 4 in future matches. That might hurt his attacking appeal slightly, but the next fixtures for Brentford look rather good, and I'm happy to even maybe start Henry in my team personally. I've mentioned that over on Twitter that I may well just bench Gabriel, who I'm stuck with, for Henry in game week 2, because I do back Palace to do quite well against Arsenal in this upcoming game week. And if Gabriel's not only not offering any attacking threat, but he's also maybe a rotation risk now in the system, then Rico Henry is definitely not one that I'm happy to fall back on. And it was kind of why I went for him over someone like Udogie, who plays against Manchester United in game week 2, and I don't really back to get a clean sheet in that one. He still looked rather attacking, Udogie, and I could have had him in this list, but personally with Spurs at the moment, it's an avoid for now, and it's a wait and see at least until game week 3, so I'm not going to delve too much into how they've been performing, especially defensively. I'm not sure about how serious the Romero injury is, but if he's out for any sort of times, even one game, then that could really hurt Spurs as a defence, and we saw the kind of difference, although it was quite an early injury in the match, between when Romero was on the field and when he went off after his goal. So yeah, that kind of covers the 4.5 million defender bracket. Kabore at 4.0 looks rather good. Some people might have Baldock in that spot as well, but if you're looking for a really cheap defender you need, he definitely looks nice. Of course, doesn't have a fixture in game week 2, he blanks, so definitely not going for him if you need a player to play in game week 2, of course, which you'll probably figure out before you do the transfer, hopefully. But yeah, he looks really promising, looked very attacking, looks like he'll fit in well in the Premier League and is up to speed with how kind of high the level is in this country. But yeah, Kabore looks really nice. And then onto the midfield then. So we've got Saka, Martinelli, Rashford and Bruno Fernandes. Martinelli is probably the weakest of these options at the end of game week 1. We've only seen 2 of these players actually play because Manchester United, at the time of recording, are yet to actually have their fixture against Wolves. Maybe Bruno Fernandes and Rashford will blow Martinelli and Saka's performances out of the water, but I still think they looked rather impressive. I've seen a few hints at people maybe selling Martinelli, moving him on for a different midfield option, and I don't think that's anything to fault Martinelli. He got an assist in that game, and he might have looked a little bit isolated, but I think it's more to do with the fact that there are just so many good-looking midfield options at the moment, and so many other players that look promising in this midfield. And I think that's why, if you're not on a midfield 5 formation at the moment, so a 3-5-2, maybe even a 4-5-1 if you're fancying to go for that, then I think having 5 in your midfield is definitely something you should be looking to shift towards. And these 4 are building the bulk of the teams that don't have Mohamed Salah in them at the moment. So Saka, definitely keep, of course. We saw why. He's on penalties as well, which we've seen quite a few of already in the opening weekend, so that's a sign maybe of things to come in future game weeks. Marcus Rashford as well. If I had to pick one of him or Bruno Fernandes, it still would be him. Of course, you're probably going to make your assessment after tonight's game and seeing how Manchester United do fare up. But that midfield 5 slot where there's the 6.5 million midfielders all the way up to someone like James Maddison at 7.5, Phil Foden maybe even is one you've got in your team right now. These are some of the ones that I'd be looking to bring in if that is the case. We've got Luis Diaz, we've got Eze, we've got Maddison, we've got Diaby. Now I would stick Mbomo in here, or I would stick Matoma in here, but here's why not. Mbomo, I think, is just an obvious one. I think if you don't have him at the moment and you're looking to go for someone, he's probably the best midfielder for value that you can pick up right now. Just due to his fixtures, which we mentioned with Henry, look rather nice over the next couple of games. On penalties as well. Got a lot of minutes, which wasn't something that was always the case last season, but I suspected would definitely change. We saw in the last few games of last season, when Tony was out, that Mbomo did significantly see a boost in his game time, which I'm glad to see has carried on into the 23-24 campaign. So Mbomo would be my favourite. Matoma is probably one that if you didn't go with from the start, maybe leave him out. The Brighton points are being quite spread amongst the attackers. We saw that even when they scored 4 in game week 1. There's many options that can come in off the bench as well, get those goals, get those assists, and so there's no real talisman like there might be in some of these options that you can see on screen right here. So personally, Mbomo, I would have probably prioritise as a transfer if you're looking for a midfielder that you can afford him for 6.5 mil, which you're going to need if you're going to want to buy any of these other options anyway. And Matoma is one that if you have, hold for now until the fixtures turn, but if you don't have, then I wouldn't be in any rush to get him over maybe even some of these assets. So Luis Diaz in that game against Chelsea looked rather impressive. He did get subbed a little bit early, of course, but he took his finish really well. And personally, just hearing from Liverpool fans that, Klopp does really like Luis Diaz, and I think he's going to start a lot of games. If we're going to continue to see this Gakpo midfielder role as well, it leaves another slot open in that attack. It's only the 3 of Luis Diaz, Jota and Darwin kind of fighting for 2 positions out of the front line. So that's why I think Luis Diaz's appeal goes up more. He scored the highest expected FPL points total of any of the midfielders in this bracket too. As mentioned, really nice finish for the goal, and definitely one to keep an eye on, maybe more so than actually jump on straight away. But maybe if Salah's not looking the best value down the line and you still want a Liverpool asset in your attack, or maybe even you don't own any Liverpool at the moment and you're looking for a cheaper alternative to Mo Salah, maybe even for game week 2, where they have, of course, a very nice home fixture against Bournemouth that I remember Luis Diaz doing very well in last year, whilst Mohamed Salah did blank in. Maybe if you're looking for history to repeat itself, then you can go with him. Eze is one who didn't actually pick up a return in Game Week 1, but was probably the most unlucky player of the game week, if we'll give out that award. He had heaps of shots, he had heaps of attempted assists as well, a lot of great set-piece deliveries, which I thought was very interesting. Could have been some definite chances taken. I think Anderson was on the end of one of those and probably should have put that away as well. It was very much what I predicted at the start of the season, very talismanic of Eze, looking great in the midfield. It was against Sheffield United, who might be one of the weaker sides he's going to come up against in the next couple of game weeks, but I still think it was a great sign of things to come and a sign that he's ready for the season and ready to lead this Crystal Palace team in their Premier League campaign over the 23-24 season. In terms of moving forward, Game Week 2 is probably not the best time to jump on Eze, unfortunately. He's got that Arsenal fixture, which does look rather tough. One more week to leave and assess him seems to be the smart way to go, and probably the same can be said about James Maddison, who faces Manchester United in Game Week 2. And now, depending on what we see from Manchester United tonight, they may look absolutely shambolic in defence, and that may change things. And I still think there will be goals in the Manchester United against Spurs game. I just think that it's not 100% set whether Maddison is the best Spurs asset and whether he's worth going ahead of all these other midfield options as well, such as maybe even Mbomo. Picking Maddison over Mbomo is probably something I would not be would not be likely to do, based on what we've seen so far. So Maddison is one I want to wait and see more. Richarlison could still provide an option. He didn't look very promising in Game Week 1 at all, but in the future, he may come into some good form in a couple of game weeks' time. Maybe he might just take a few weeks to get into that role of the number 9 and leading Spurs in attack, or maybe they'll even sign a new striker, which would probably just boost Maddison's appeal even more, if anything. But he looked really good. Obviously picked up 2 assists. Might have been a little bit lucky to grab the second one, but if anything, I think it was a great piece of skill to manage to get the ball over to the attacker who ended up scoring the goal, because Maddison, he's that kind of player who everything's going to run through him in the Spurs attack, and that's why I'm definitely keeping him firmly on my watch list to come into my midfield around Game Week 3 or Game Week 4. And then finally, Diaby of Aston Villa, who obviously got blown away by Newcastle in that game, but he looked really promising. His pace was just electrifying. He looked brilliant up front alongside Ollie Watkins, especially during the kind of early portions of the game. Had a few other chances as well, and of course took his goal really, really well on his weaker foot on his debut. So definitely another one to keep an eye on, and another one to kind of add into the mixer and further emphasise why maybe waiting around and seeing how these players fare in the next couple of weeks might be the smart move. So yeah, that's my assessment kind of on all the midfield options. There are so many at the moment to go for, and generally holding who you have at the moment, whether that's even Phil Foden against Newcastle, probably seems the smart move. Having 2 free transfers going into Game Week 3 can be really, really valuable. And finally then, we'll touch on the forwards. Everyone's got Erling Haaland. Everyone's probably got a 4.5 million in their team as well, unless you're on maybe a 3-4-3 formation. But Mubama seemed to be a very popular one. Didn't actually get any minutes in Game Week 1 when there were some other 4.5 million forwards who did. But my view is just don't waste a transfer on that this early in the season, where your transfers are arguably at their most valuable point. But it's really the second forward position where there were some differences in a lot of FPL teams at the moment. Even some of the most template teams did have different second forwards in, whether that be Ollie Watkins or João Pedro, who were probably the 2 most popular. João Pedro did miss an absolute open goal, should have scored early on in the game, but he managed to kind of make up for it and atone with that penalty goal later in the match. He looked great value at 5.5 million, and he did look very involved in a lot of the things Brighton did. I mentioned with Mitoma how the kind of attacking returns are spread around so much in the Brighton attack, but he looked like he's ready to get his fair share of those. At 5.5 million, I'm definitely willing to hold him and maybe even bench him when the fixtures just turn bad, rather than moving him over to a different forward option if I can't quite gather the funds, because at 5.5 he's obviously quite a bit cheaper than a lot of the other forward picks at the moment. Ollie Watkins, on the other hand, is not. He's kind of at the more expensive of the kind of popular price bracket that people are going for in their second striker at the moment. And so him and Villa looked really good early on in that game. I think that in future game weeks they'll definitely do better as well in terms of attack, and they'll grab more goals. And we saw how involved Watkins and Diaby are going to be. I can see them combining for a lot of goals this season, so definitely wouldn't be moving Watkins anywhere. But if you have got a forward slot open, or you're looking to make a transfer in terms of who you've got up front in your team, these are some of the options that I would be considering at this point. We've first got the man who went up against Aston Villa, Alexander Isak. Obviously scored a magnificent brace, took it really well, his second goal as well, despite it being due to an error from Konsa. Looked fantastic. Got a little bit of an early sub. The game was wrapped up at that point, so it's hard to tell whether that will be a sign of things to come for Callum Wilson, but I see in a lot of games Wilson will be coming on. He proves clinical with his chances. I think it was 4 shots, 4 on target for Wilson late on in the game, even with the limited amount of minutes that he did have. But an expected FPL points total for game week 1 of 9.1 for Isak shows why he's earned that price rise up to 7.6 so early. But that will unfortunately price quite a lot of people out of going for him. And I do still think there's a week extra you can wait in terms of these Newcastle assets. In terms of a lot of players at the moment in FPL, waiting does seem to be the best option if you can. Visser is another one who looks really good, and personally I don't quite prefer him to Mbomo, but definitely one you could consider. I really like how his bonus points, he showed that he's great in the bonus point system, which is something that you're probably going to look to have in an asset who you're going for that isn't on penalties. He's only 6 million, of course, as well, so he's at the lower end of that price bracket. Could maybe even be one to replace João Pedro in a few weeks' time. Could potentially even be a double up on Mbomo and Visser if they're performing well enough come the time we're looking to make that transfer. And Awanai is another one who I'm looking for down the line, and I'm looking to own in a few game weeks' time when the Nottingham Forest fixtures do improve. Now, that's probably quite a few more game weeks than some of these other options you could bring in. But Awanai does look fantastic. He scored against Arsenal. He'll score against other big teams, I'm sure. It's just quite hard to go with a player who has got such poor fixtures that Nottingham Forest do have. If we take a look back at the fixture ticker, we can see they're not as low down as they were at the start of the season, but they do still have some tricky ones over the next few. They've got Manchester United game week 3 away. They've got Chelsea away game week 4. They've got Man City away in game week 6. And they've got some other slightly tricky fixtures that I don't back too much. Game week 7 against Brentford, game week 8 against Crystal Palace as well. This isn't an easy fixture run. And whilst he faces Sheffield United at home in game week 2, which I could see him doing very well in as he tries to kind of get back to full fitness, which was the reason he didn't start against Arsenal. I think that he'll do really well in that fixture, and potentially at home to Burnley in game week 5 as well is a chance to definitely see how he's performing ahead of maybe bringing him in around that game week 9 mark where he plays Luton, and the fixtures onwards from there look a little bit better as well as he gets some of those tougher games early in the season out of the way. So definitely one to keep an eye on, and one that I kind of wish I could have owned from the start of the season when the prices came out. Unfortunately, I kind of knew the fixtures just weren't good enough to be able to go for a Forest asset, because I quite like Brennan Johnson in the midfield at 6.02. And then finally, we've got Alvarez of Manchester City. And now Kevin De Bruyne seems like he'll be out for quite a bit. I think it was a hamstring injury that he picked up. But either way, should be sidelined for maybe a couple of game weeks. And that does leave an extra slot kind of open in the potential to start in this Manchester City side that looks like it's going to be pretty dominant again this season, which is a surprise to pretty much no one, I feel. But Alvarez, Foden, these kind of assets who were slight minutes risk due to the fact that De Bruyne was back from injury, now look even a little bit more solid. And whilst Alvarez is another forward option who slightly plays out of position into midfield or a bit deeper at times, I think with Manchester City and how many goals they're going to score, you can bet that Alvarez is going to be involved in quite a few. I just personally wouldn't take the risk right now on someone who isn't minutes proven, and we're not confident that he might even start the next game, which is against Newcastle and is quite a difficult fixture, so probably not the time to bring in any of these strikers, to be honest. And if you're looking for a gamble on a forward, there's one other one that I might take, and at 7 million, didn't get a return in the game that he played in game week 1 against Liverpool, only a 1-pointer for him, but Jackson looked really promising, and unfortunately, as a 7.0 million forward, he's not going to get that many transfers in. Due to that 1-pointer, you could jump on him, But I think that what most people are going to think is that he's that other Chelsea striker curse. He's another one who's going to come in and he's going to miss heaps and heaps of chances, like Morata did, like so many other forwards at Chelsea have kind of suffered the curse. But I do see it as a promising sign, and an XG of 1.19 in that game, which is probably going to be his toughest, arguably, over the first 8 game weeks. It's definitely a positive sign of things to come. He was involved in 3 big chances as well, and he was the one who was on the end of all of those. So a lot of XG, and they've got great fixtures, as we mentioned, with 4th in the fixture difficulty rankings over the next 7 game weeks. 6.7 expected FPL points, only converted into the 1, is a sign of kind of someone who's looking like a promising option, but not too many people who are playing the game a little bit more casually are going to jump on, because they're looking at who scored the most points in game week 1 and going for it based off that. But Jackson could definitely be a 1 as a forward at 7 million, who I'm really liking the look of at the moment, and definitely one who you should be thinking about transferring in. Maybe not for game week 2, but in game week 3 he could look a really nice option, and definitely one I'm considering for when it does become time to jump off João Pedro, maybe even jump off Watkins if he doesn't end up performing. I'm looking to try and see, can I get that 1.5 million together to go from João Pedro at 5.5 up to Nick Jackson at 7 million. So yeah, that's going to wrap up today's video. I really hope you have enjoyed it. Managed to do it all in one take as well, so leave a thumbs up for that down below. I made a few errors, but hopefully you didn't find them too annoying. Thank you very much for tuning in, everyone. I hope you really have enjoyed the video. Make sure to subscribe for more fantasy football related content and more FPL, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Best of luck with your teams for tonight, everyone, for Manchester United against Wolves if you're watching before that game's been played, and I'll see you very soon. Goodbye.